Good day, everyone, and welcome back to Session 2 of Day 2 of the Intelligent Automation World Series. My name is Rochelle Hood, and I have the pleasure of serving as SSON's Global Head of Customer Analytics and Research, and today I have the opportunity to be able to assist with moderating and hosting today's webinar session. Before we get into this very action-packed, powerful full hour of content, let me just walk you through a couple of quick logistics to make sure that you can get the most out of today and most out of the insights and information you're going to receive. So in your audience view screen, let me just point out two key pieces. On the left-hand side, there's a Q&A box. If you experience any kind of technical problems, you have questions related to the webinar platform itself, or any questions related to the conference as a whole this week, please put that in there and we'll be happy to get right back to you. Also, just below that, you'll see the resource list. On that resource list, there's three wonderful, think of them as bonus items, digital gift bag items. In those lists, you're going to see what source-to-pay leaders need to know about RPA, the ultimate guide to choosing RPA automation solution, and the 9 finance and accounting gaps with a great infographic to walk you through that. So those are some of the key things that you'll need to know. Other logistics, there's a lot to go through today. I know you're probably going to want to absorb it in and leave a little bit more time to do so. 1 day from today, so 24 hours from now, you'll receive an email with a link in there to the on-demand recording of this session. You may play that back to see the slides again and to also then get any of those resource list items that you may not have had an opportunity to download today. So with those logistics out of the way, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome back once again our partner, Kofax, who has got a brilliant client case study to walk through with you today. So we have two presenters to share with you today. First is Art Sarno. He's the Product Marketing Manager and Director of Finance Process Automation for Kofax. He has held senior marketing, sales, and operations positions in both social media analytics, enterprise content management, business process management, and business intelligence. Prior to those roles, he also was a VP at Infigi, settlement analysis provider, where he held marketing executive, open text, enterprise content management director roles, and also has some background in Cognizant, which is now part of IBM, as many of you know. So Art is a credentialed mathematician with a science and business teacher, so some great background there to bring to you. But before that, we're going to also have Charles Weidman on the stage, and Charles is the President and CTO of Buddha Logic. Love the name. He's an expert in design, development, implementation, and delivery of distributed client-server and in-tier solutions for enterprise content management and services, business process management, financial process automation, and RPA. Throughout the Buddha Logic history, the company was founded in 2003. He works with both government entities and private sector companies. So with all of that, you've got some great background to share with us and a wonderful use case here specific to walk us through how CHFA transformed accounting processes with RPA. Charles, let me turn the digital stage over to you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Appreciate the kind words. Thank you for presenting and getting things started. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here presenting with Art Sarno today. Been working with Kofax for even prior to Buddha Logic existing, so we really have a nice relationship. Today, I'll be presenting the story about Colorado Housing Finance Authority. We've been working with them, and we are one of their strategic partners in building their capture and content management and business automation process structures. Let me give you a little background about CHFA itself. They were established in 1973 by the Colorado General Assembly. They work to strengthen Colorado by helping all Colorado residents afford housing, and they promote community development. They're a state agency, and they really are a team. You know, CHFA is a team of people. It's one of the best organizations I've worked with. Everybody is encouraged to look for new ways to do their job, to improve things. They're encouraged to be part of the community. It's just a really pleasant environment to work in. Great space, good people, and they continue to promote a vision which in Colorado is great. We're welcoming more and more people, it seems like, daily. Some of us residents here have been here for a long time. I'm actually a Colorado native. You know, a little bit of give and take there with how many people are coming in, but it's a wonderful space. CHFA's vision is to, you know, provide housing for everyone and economic prosperity. I had mentioned the teamwork portion of CHFA. Back in 2006, there was a move to take their paper world and convert that paper and start the process of taking content and making it digital, so transforming paper into digital, and that was started back in 2006. I had the privilege of coming on board about 2010 and helping them move into that world where, when I started, 98% of the paper coming into CHFA, 98% of the documents coming into CHFA were paper-based. So, you know, you get these deliveries daily. The internal records management group would grab the paper and start scanning it. So within a couple years, we started working through this process of offering vendors that worked with CHFA a way to, well, shrink their costs. Say, okay, here you've got all this paper. If you guys can deliver it this electronically, we're going to say, you know, you're basically saving all the delivery costs, and we can start providing a faster SLA in terms of getting loans processed. So part of CHFA's management charters are that every year they project, you know, anywhere from 2 to 3 years, they put together what the goals are of the company. And as we started this trip and this journey of converting paper to electronic, and then within 2 years, basically flipping from 98% paper and 2% electronic to 98% electronic and 2% paper, that was one of those goals, those challenges that was presented by management to the staff to say, hey, how do we get better at providing a better product to our customers? And from that, there's more loans get processed, and again, back to their vision, where you see CHFA saying, we want to provide affordable housing for everyone in Colorado. So that mentality is ingrained and part of CHFA as an entity. Again, really nice to work with because they're thinking in terms of what's next, what can we do better? And that's progressed all the way up till December of last year, where again, you know, their charter is to look at the next 2 to 3 years down the road and let's find opportunities or our challenges of automation. About 2016, they went into workflow, and we adapted to a workflow product that enhanced and grew the Kofax footprint. So we have a KTA footprint, we have KTM, which is the transformation from digital or paper and doing classifications and separations, et cetera, of documents. So the movement was there, and what they recognized was there are a number of areas, and they pretty much looked at financial to begin with, because there's a lot of activity associated with everything from reconciling bills that they get every month to distributing that information to people to review it. Spreadsheets are a popular tool and an item that gets passed around to so many people. Siloed access databases and, siloed spreadsheets and data that is spread around different departments, and oftentimes it's not quite the same. So, I think it's a generic problem that almost every entity has. And so CHFA was introduced to robotic process automation, RPA, back in December of last year. And they were very interested in it because they had a couple of very, let's just say, repetitive tasks that required, in this case, this business challenge was they received a bill every month. They have 12 of these a year, and they basically allotted one full-time employee to handle that. Now, it was a handful of people that equaled that one full-time employee. However, a lot of data that came into their world was there was some paper, but you have this spreadsheet, and one person would digest the spreadsheet and split it up into pieces and distribute it to the other processors to start this reconciliation process. It had that after their education on RPA and CHFA, they were able to take a look at that and pinpoint that particular process as a very good candidate to automate. So part of that business challenge was to understand, well, here is the problem, right? We can only do so many line items. These spreadsheets have over 100,000 line items and 23 plus worksheets inside of it. So you can imagine if your job was to open that up every month and start distributing data, that's quite you got to have a bunch of coffee to start your day. Anyway, and again, part of the recognition and understanding of what robotic process automation is where is that appropriate? And in this case, there was a lot of data that was being moved from one spreadsheet to another, and then to a homegrown access database. Some reporting was done off of it, and then this coordination of multiple people back into another spreadsheet to make sure that they understood where the reconciliation issues were, and then that information got distributed back to some reporting systems. So a lot of what they call swivel key or Swivelchair data entry, moving data from point A to point B, and it's a human doing it. They also had another challenge of, we have these daily processes that people spend, it could be an hour to 2 hours collecting Jenny Mae loan information, and it required access to different websites, grabbing the information again, just putting it into spreadsheets and distributing it. So another good candidate. So with their charter of how do we go about improving these processes, we move into what happens if we don't, right? What are the implications if we just continue doing this? Well, obviously we can continue to do the manual process. It works. It's perhaps a little frustrating, and you saw on the previous slide they only looked at charges $250 and above. So as their business grows, these types of reconciliation processes are obviously going to be, there's going to be more work to be done, and they're going to have to hire additional people. Reporting and accuracy and timeliness, all of that gets impacted if you can't figure out a way to automate these processes. Other implications are, how can you take this in-house? Can we find a solution in-house that would allow us to do, automate some of these things? Can you leverage your existing tools? A lot of companies are in the same space. How do I leverage things I've already invested in, I'm paying for? How do I get that information to them? And oftentimes, because of the diverse data coming in, whether it's from spreadsheets or having to go look it up on websites, you have to build custom applications, and the information technology staff typically is already doing everything they can just to keep things running smoothly. And then now you need to say, all right, well, if we're going to start this automation project, we're going to need IT resources. We're going to need to schedule meetings and go through the requirements process. You have to look at the project scheduling that's already in place. How long is this going to take? So again, this concept and this philosophy CHFA has ingrained in all of their employees is, what are our alternatives? Can there be something else out there? This is actually, that kind of thought process brought RPA, the CHFA product, to the forefront, and because it integrated very well with CHFA's current platform, everything from the Kofax Total Agility to their KTM and their Kofax Capture backbone, this said, all right, here's a tool that is showing up that says, you know what, I do need IT, but I don't have to have the IT person be there to do the typical requirements, design, development. Then I get to see what they put together, and then there's those iterations. So here's a product that now says, you know what, the person who's doing the process is a very good candidate to actually build the robot. So the implications are, if we stay where we're going, we can pretty much see we're going to be spending more money, we're going to need more FTEs, et cetera. And just a note on that, something that's kind of a wonderful side effect of robotic process automation is that if you bring digital workers into the process and your business slows down, you're not having to lay them off. You just turn them off for a while. So one of those nice side effects versus staying with your manual process, hiring more people to handle the spike volumes, and then when those volumes drop, you need to find other work for them to do, or maybe you can't afford to keep them on. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about implementation just on that past slide where CHFA, the tool itself, showed up as something that, again, works well with their current platform. They're converting documents and they're extracting information off of them. They're doing intelligent confirmation of the data that they're extracting, and then they're putting it into a repository. The RPA CHFA product was a very cost-effective solution. The price point was something that they could absorb even in December, when the budgets had been pretty much, they were all gone. It was a really big win for them because they said, hey, if we purchase this now, we can start using it immediately in January, right? We can turn around and we can take a use case and move forward with it. And it was the investment amount was definitely a risk, but it was a low risk. Here's the cost. We can bring people up to speed, and we can have the person who's currently managing and doing this process build this robot. Again, cost-effective solution. The next step was to start simple. So this monthly bill shows up, and it has, I think it's right now 30 worksheets inside this workbook, Excel workbook, and a number of the worksheets had over 100,000 line items in it. And so rather than tackle the whole worksheet, we're big believers in let's start with the summary page. And what we did was we had the senior analyst who handles the billing. We sat down and we looked at their current manual process, and the manual process was I think there were a total of 13 columns available. The first one was a summary column. The following 12 were details associated with that summary information. And the existing manual process was we only have time to grab that summary information. So let's grab, that's all they did in the manual. So as we stepped through this, we said, well, look, we'll show you how to build the robot so it gets the summary information. But you know what? While we're there, let's grab all the detail information. So what happened is that we were able to take this first summary worksheet, and we were able to get every piece of information on that worksheet, take that information, and feed it into a table structure. One of the powerful parts of CHFA is that I'm as a let's say a process owner or the person responsible for the process. I don't have a lot of database experience. I don't have a lot of programming experience. Great. Okay. But I understand the process, and the tool lets me model that. So that huge win right there. And with coaching, we were able to take this senior processor and say, okay, you get the data. We'll put it into some structures. We'll make sure that we clean the data. That's another thing. Everything that we grab out of there, we can make sure that the values are actually numbers, dates, etc. So the tool, promotes that kind of thing. And what happens is that data gets moved into a structure that's based on what that user understands. And then there's the piece which is really nice, where we connect with IT, the information technology group, and say, hey, we now are able to grab all of the detail plus the summary information on this, and we put it into this structure. Tell us what that structure needs to look like in order for us to feed the structures that are already in existence that the manual process used to feed from people just entering data, or maybe Excel spreadsheets that were saved into a format that could be uploaded. So we begin the integration with IT, but from a whole different perspective. IT has already got the database structure set up. So now that we take our process structure and what that the person who owns the process understands, and then it starts making sense mapping that information into that table that represents what IT has built. So there's a number of things going on here, but what's great is that the tool allows you to define your data set, and then you can quickly change and modify that data set if you need to push the data or integrate the data with an existing system. The benefits, again, now not only are you taking the burden off of IT to gather the information the way you understand the bill is presented from a subject matter expert. You're also the time it takes to do that and the additional information you can is significantly shorter, and then you get the increased data. So just by starting with that first sheet, we were able to go from what typically took about 3 days to just do the summary sheet with one column, and put that information into the appropriate homegrown access tables as well as other spreadsheets to get distributed to other people who are responsible for looking for reconciliation issues. Now became a matter of minutes. The first run of that sheet took 3 minutes to process the entire summary worksheet. So now what's happened here is a couple things. One is you've got the person who owns the process. They're beginning to understand and get comfortable with the Kapow tool. It's visual based. About the only, I guess, technical pieces are, the understanding of how you want the data to look, how you want it to be stored somewhere. There's some SQL information, SQL type queries that what we've encouraged people to use Google, lovely tool. How do I do this to go get this kind of information from a database? And there's some HTML if you start getting into doing web pages. So we've got the process owner becoming comfortable with the tool. It took about 6 weeks for her to get to the space where she could say, all right, I understand what's going on with that summary worksheet. Now we're ready to take the next step, which is let's take the first detail worksheet and start processing that. So now we've taken a simple win. The return on investment was very obvious, 3 days down to about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how much summary information was recorded. So you get a couple wins right off the bat. Management who said, yes, we think this is the right way to go. Go ahead and spend those funds on the product. They see a return right away. We've educated and started the process of bringing what robotic process automation is into a department. That's an education all itself, and it's an awareness. So that has started. We have the person who owns the process feeling good about starting to increase the complexity of the robot. So wins for everyone. You can see we took that process, kind of that crawl, walk, run, and we definitely crawled, but it was only a 6-week crawl, which, that's pretty good. And then we're starting to walk at week 8, and at this point in time, the spreadsheet that gets processed is 30-plus worksheets. And like I said, there were a number of those worksheets that have over 100,000 line items. So that process now takes, on the larger, lengthier line item spreadsheets, about 30 minutes to run. So you can see how we process every sheet now. The process owner added a sheet at a time, and oftentimes, again, a nice part of the product, you can copy and paste. I can take the branch that handled sheet 1, and I can make a copy of it and start working on sheet 2, adjusting for whatever sheet 2 data that needs to be pulled out. So that was a huge, again, we just started showing that this typical 3 weeks to process this this bill that came in, and to do a preliminary $250 or higher. We're only going to check those line items. We're only going to take summary information. We have to coordinate it with all these people. Now, the philosophy and the concept is, hey, let's get all of the data. Let's drop looking at, at a cutoff point. We can go down to the penny. And working with IT and leveraging CHFA's investment in their business analytics and intelligence tools, which have been out there for a while. It was difficult to feed it with the manual process. Now we have a way to feed all that information accurately into a series of tables that those tools now can be leveraged, and you start getting more value, again, a return on your investment, not only in the product kapow, but the tools you already have purchased and that you're using, legacy tools that oftentimes, unless you have the right people, lie dormant or lightly used. So now we have this wonderful implementation. We've got this one example of a good candidate for robotic process automation. This then promotes.
Charlie, this is Art. What
Hi,
are
Art.
the skill sets of the people that are implementing this now today? Are they technical or business users or all of the above?
Oh, good point. Most of them are business users. So most of them are the people that were doing the manual process. Now they understood Excel spreadsheets. Some of them had some experience, with access tables and how to run queries. But in general, no programming experience, no technical training other than using Office products for the most part, Microsoft Office products. And understanding, what they're supposed to do with that data. So, yeah, that's a good point. It takes what we've experienced here at CHFA and other clients we've worked with. It's about 6 weeks of 2 to 4 hour sessions twice a week to get somebody comfortable using the tool. And that's the coaching part of it. And then the subject matter expert, or we like to call them robot process engineers, they go off and they get to build stuff on their own. So we would have a meeting on a working session Tuesday, and we come back and do one Thursday or Friday to answer all their questions. So it's very interactive. Another part of the tool is it's completely isolated, so you can build and test and run things end to end without ever impacting any environment. You can put it on a laptop and understand what you're trying to build. It's a great tool. Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Some of the things that lessons learned. This process, again, when you're introducing the concept of robotic process automation, it becomes a light bulb goes off as people understand what the tool is and where it can be used appropriately. Part of that is, okay, we need to make sure we're providing orientation meetings, right, with people who need the education because they don't realize a robot could help with so many of their different processes that they don't even think about them anymore because they are pretty much mindless, repetitive tasks. They don't think in terms of, can I automate that? They just do it. So managers, process owners, process workers, what we've done at CHFA is we've started incorporating orientation meetings, get people involved in what we're doing with our projects. We've developed a RPA Center of Excellence, and part of that is getting people certified on COFAX. Currently, there are 3 people certified at CHFA, and that's since December. There's a couple more ready to take the certification tests, so we're training more and more of these, like you said, the process owners or the managers who are doing this work. And then the other piece of that center of excellence is we need to develop standards. One of the things you recognize right away, and with any product, whether you're a programmer to a documentation specialist, you need to come up with standards, and that's what's grown out of this as we've added more people to work on different robots for different departments within CHFA. So again, lessons learned, start small, document what you do, come up with some initial naming conventions, and work through the process. And when you get your first success, do a little bit of a debrief. You sit back, you kind of look at what you've done, and before you build robot number 2, let's say from this point on, here's how we're going to name things, etc. So lessons learned. Again, the results, I kind of spoke to them already. We have this wonderful, we've got let's see, 4 robots in production now. Some doing the web work where that daily access to websites brings information down, and then we have 2 robots that handle the legacy, that monthly billing process. There's a number of other robots that have been defined that are in process, and the time it took to do the reconciliation process was approximately 3 weeks every month. So now we're down to a number of days, and the reconciliation process is now we collect all the data, we clean it, we put it into the structures that take advantage of the business intelligence tools and the reporting, and let those tools do the reconciliation. Now we have dashboards, and we have a way to connect to the person who sent the bill to say, hey, we found all these discrepancies, here's what we found, and we send that information to them. Now the speed at which things happens is significantly increased, and the people that were involved in that process have more time to actually do other reconciliations. So you've freed up time, you've used existing resources, you start getting an ROI on products you didn't even think would be impacted by doing robotic process automation. This is just a little snapshot. It may be a little hard to read. Really, it isn't too important what's in that description. It's more, this was one of the orientations that we put together after spending a couple months on building robots and doing that first process, is a step back and say, let's look at what we're doing here within our organization, and let's identify the dark blue, by the way, are the good candidates for robotic process automation. And then the green is more of a learning. So, maybe it's a mix of robotics and the transformation engine that already exists at CHFA. And then finally, the reasoning one is more of an AI or human base. So you can see just by this chart where CHFA is going and what they've already recognized. 2/3 of these areas within different departments are ripe for doing process automation. It's a really nice snapshot of what we've found as robot process engineers and promoters of RPA, is that most organizations could have the same roadmap, and they would identify at least that many robot process automation opportunities. Again, benefits, accuracy, that information gets pulled and there's no transposition. That data is exactly the way it was when I grabbed that out of the spreadsheet or a database. So that's just something that is a huge win. Siloed data can be accessed and brought together into a structure that can be read and reported on. Your actual process gets re-engineered as you go through it, and the tool is very powerful in terms of a visual interface. I'm taking my process, I've got it all mapped out on paper, but all of a sudden when I'm in my robotic tool, CHFA, I'm now moving things around quickly and going, hey, I didn't need to do 2/3 of that process. Now I've re-engineered it. It's more efficient. Again, another one of those benefits. And I mentioned taking advantage of the systems that you'd already purchased. I can feed them now, or I can retrieve information from them. Again, getting ROI on products that you didn't even think were related. Again, recommendations, start with a simple task. Keep it simple. Do not complicate your robot. That is a way to go the wrong direction with robots. Keep it as simple as you can, and then show the results as quickly as you can, then start adding complication. Establish the center of excellence, do your naming conventions, your orientations, make sure that people understand what robot process automation is and that it's really a tool. This doesn't replace people. All it does is make people smarter, really. It gives them that, it enables them, again, to do what typically they were hired to do. I need you to review and make a decision on this. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the CHFA story, and I really appreciated the opportunity to present it to everyone who's online. Thank you. And I'd like to turn it over to Art now, who's going to take us down the path of the future and where CHFA is going.
All right, thank you, Charles, and welcome everybody. I'll be talking about some of the key capabilities that we and our customers tell us are critical to ensure the enablement and effective deployment of Kofax RPA solutions. So these are what I would call enablers or attributes that will support the deployment that Charlie was talking about, Now, how did this all come about? We've all heard the story. A lot of large organizations are reluctant to redesign or replace or even enhance their existing systems. They stick. We know that some of these ERP systems stay in place for 8, 9, 10, 15 years. A lot of the ERP vendors have 20-year roadmaps on some of these products. So for this reason, the philosophy behind RPA is to avoid the complexity of risk of such changes where they're not warranted. So you don't have to throw out your system, rehash your system, revamp it, and in fact, what you're doing is you're basically enhancing it using the robot. So the fundamental driving force behind the interest and desire to use intelligent robots is to address the challenges that companies are facing to integrate these systems and disparate data sources into their processes. So that's really one of the key issues. And then we've all heard about this concept of Swivelchair automation, and what we mean by that is a lot of the handwork versus the head work. You'll hear that term being used by us and a lot of the competitors, that there are certain tasks that are very hand-oriented, they're task-oriented, they're repetitive, they're almost autonomic for some people. And we want to replace that, reassign these people to more strategic activities and start to address some of the cognitive things that people are doing. So this intersection of people, systems, and processes is really a red zone, right, to manual work. It's usually referred to as Swivelchair automation, where the users are moving between applications, worksheets, websites, portals, email. All this information is done manually. It involves copying and pasting. You heard Charles talk about that, especially with spreadsheets, which still are the #1 BI tool in the market. And you're looking up data, you're taking information from spreadsheets. And this work being done costs organizations a lot of money, loses time, and it impacts service, and it also impacts customer satisfaction. And that's another byproduct of this, not only to mitigate labor, but to improve customer satisfaction. So in terms of the critical attributes that we see, clearly one of the most important things is enablement of business users to participate in the process. And by that I mean that the system needs to be able to implement a no-code environment. So you're interacting through visualization, through responding to dialogues, and yet it has to be powerful enough to be deployed as if it were developed, by a very sophisticated development. It needs bidirectional flows between the data and the system and the data. And you have to apply business logic without writing a single line of code. So one of our design goals was, unlike a macro recording tool that limits the designer, where you're just basically mimicking a process, the system will allow you to enhance it, extend it, and expand it for higher value. That's very important. So this no-code robot design that we have in the system allows you to do this. Design environment for the business analyst and powerful enough for the developer to participate. And there you see some of the attributes of interactive design. The testing is much easier. You can implement, you can have a lot more participation by the community, and that enriches the whole experience for everyone. The second attribute that's important is centralized execution. This is critical. And by that I mean that the deployment and execution and management of the robots is taking place on the server. Okay? We're not running these robots on desktops or virtual machines. This creates a nightmare if you're doing that, with deploying and maintaining potentially hundreds of thousands of robots across all these desktops and virtualized environments. Multiple robots, in our case, can be executed from a single server or assigned to a particular server in a clustered environment, and this gives you a lot more scalability and performance than deploying these robots to all of these desktops. So in effect, that you really don't have the need to run the robot on the desktop. You don't want to do that, and the robots perform their tasks on the server, and they interact with a very thin layer of interaction between the server and the system. And we know what the virtual desktop integration costs can be by implementing solutions this way. So that's another important thing. The third one is superior automation for web-based applications. Okay? And by that I mean that we have a robot design environment that basically integrates the browser into the robot. Okay? So by that I mean that when you have a number of multiple robots interacting with a web source, whether it's a website, a portal, or an application, they're all running on a single server. And that means that instead of having one robot running on a server or a desktop at one time, taking full control of the browser, we allow you to build robots for web-based systems and web-based content as fast and as easy as powerful as you can with the robot. So this gives you a heck of a lot more capability in terms of the system and the activity, right? You don't have to have Chrome or any of these other web browsers online and running as a separate process. We have the embedded in-memory web browser that's running. Then the third attribute is application for web-based applications. And intelligent screen automation comes up right away. This good example of this would be an environment like Citrix, where you really don't have a lot of APIs. There's really no behind-the-scenes type of transactions you can grab, such as in a website where you're looking at HTML. So our on-intelligent screen automation uses machine learning and neural networks to accelerate the development, and it identifies all of the elements on the screen and creates objects for the robot designer to work with. So you can see there that we've looked at this screen. It looks like a sheet of paper. In effect, we're doing like an OCR process, but we're creating these user interface objects that are now can be articulated separately and used collectively or in sequences to perform tasks. So by capturing these images and using the OCR to extract the tests, the robots overcome the hurdle when you don't have full access to the application structure itself. This is very common in a Citrix environment. Then, of course, another critical attribute is analytics. And by analytics, I mean the ability to provide visibility and insight to the entire process. So we allow for the user to take their process. Now, RPA could be participating in a process, and later I'll talk about interaction with BPM, one of our solutions, Total Agility, which is really a digital transformation platform for developing applications such as onboarding and case management. But RPA participates in this process, and while it's participating, we're really interested in gathering intelligence on the system. We're trying to look at, in this case, we're looking at pricing data, we're looking at transaction volume data. Another critical thing is we want to be able to have full insight to the whole process. So there you see a process map that describes the flow of the system, and this is dynamic. That is, this is hot, it's live. The red box indicates where the process is, the green, the starting point. If I were to click on that and we're running this live, you would drill down and see all of the transactions that are supporting it, whether it's an RPA process or a workflow process that's going on. The system is tracking the number of transactions that are passing through each of these flows. It gives you a wonderful way to be able to look at the system and see how it's progressing, monitoring it, and gathering data at the same time. Another critical part of the process intelligence is Swimlane. So if you look on the left side, the first column, you see what I would refer to as a happy state. The happy state is the optimal flow of the data through these processes. So it needs to go from, in this case, starting coding, discharging, scan start, scan end. This could be a hospital admissions transaction, and the patient is required to go through these steps in order to complete the process. In some cases, there are activities that could be bypassed. This is a risk assessment. Those things in red show a process that went from one to end without going through following processes, did not follow the happy path. So the Swimlane gives you additional insight into the process that's going on. And again, this is a combination of the process that RPA is participating in and the whole holistic view of the system as it's moving from the beginning to the end state, and all of the supporting processes and flows that are associated with it. So collectively with the Swimlane and with the process view, you really get a dynamic view of the system, and this provides feedback for continuous improvement. Another one is an area that we're going to be talking about a lot at Kofax, and I know our customers are really excited about it. It's what we would refer to as cognitive document management. We have for 20 years been involved in capture and machine learning around capture transactions. We have a number of very sophisticated algorithms to be able to extract, recognize, remember, avoid the use of templates in processing these transactions. So we use our own technologies, including our machine learning, to automate the processing of these documents from any source. And we've been recognized for years as a leader in this industry. Now, RPA complements this because RPA now can participate in accessing additional content from database sources, web portals, EDI, XML, any of the electronic interfaces that are being provided, and complement that to be able to drive really a multi-channel environment into the system. So this is what we would call the acquisition state. And at this point, we're capturing data, we're interpreting it, we're classifying it, we're extracting it, we're verifying it, we're validating it. Then we move over to the understanding where we're looking for context, we're extracting data, we're transforming formats, we're learning about the system so that when we have this activity passing through us another time, we don't have to take as much time because we now understand it. And then we finally get to the back end where we have the ERP integration, which is provided through either the RPA itself or through an API or whatever the system requires. And the robot can participate in any or all of those activities from beginning to end. And all of this is from one single source, right? It's all coming from the same vendor. We're not using a third party to come in and do one component versus us doing another. All of these solutions are delivered from our system holistically. And then finally, the last segment, just like to talk about is the participation of the RPA solution in a platform solution. So here we have a view of the Kofax Total Agility platform, and you can look at it as a digital transformation platform. We do things like customer onboarding or opening a bank account, and the system manages the entire cycle. And while the system is performing that cycle, the robot is orchestrating certain activities. So, for example, when I'm onboarding a new customer, I need to do a credit check. I might have to validate their mailing address. I may have to validate, if it's a vendor, it might be a party of interest if I'm onboarding a vendor. And all of these services can be accessed through the robot interacting with a supplier. So, for example, for a credit score, if the supplier doesn't have a well-defined web service or the web service does not provide sufficient information, we can take the transaction directly from the screen, or we can take it directly from the interface that they provide using the robot. That's a very important attribute, and we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see an interaction where BPM meets RPA, where the BPM systems have become very large infrastructures, and the RPA solutions now address, I like to use a term called mind the gap, where there are a lot of gaps in these processes. You know, the old European railroad, when you get off, you have a little sign that says mind the gap, and you have to hop over. Well, a lot of this gap filling has been filled through human interaction, and RPA is going to go forward to replace and mitigate much of that. So if you want to learn more about it, in one of your tabs, there's a set of resources that you can get access to, and we would really appreciate any feedback. And I want to thank Charlie for participating with us, and now turn it over to Rochelle to conclude this presentation. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Art, and thank you so much, Charles. That was lots of great information. As Art was just mentioning, just to highlight to everyone who might have joined midway, there are 3 items on your digital giveaway bag. It's underneath the resource list. What source-to-pay leaders need to know about RPA, that's the white paper format, the ultimate guide to choosing the right RPA solution, and mind the gaps, so mind these 9 finance and accounting gaps with RPA, and there's a great infographic to illustrate that. You may download those now, or certainly, just as a reminder, 1 business day from today, so tomorrow, midday, you will be receiving an email with a link in it to the recording of this session. You may download those resources using that link. Also, this will be the way that you'll actually be able to view this presentation. The slide deck that's come through that is inside the webinar platform, and that will come with that link. If you have any questions or anything on that, please do reach out. But if not, fantastic information, Art, fantastic use case there that you shared with us, lots of real great details about the pains, trials, and tribulations, and the ultimate success that the group went through there that you've outlined, Charles. Thanks to all of our participants who have joined us live. To those of you who are joining us in the on-demand version, we'd like to welcome you as well. And my last little announcement is just we have 2 more sessions today, the next one coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. So just an hour from now, we hope to see you back at that, where we're going to go through integrated value realization for RPA. And then we'll close up the day today with digital process transformation through RPA and AI, and that will be at 3 o'clock U.S. Eastern Time. So we hope to see you back later today, and big thanks to everyone involved in this, and this now concludes this webinar session.